everyone, it's me, Marcy Lamberson, and I thought I would show you a fun way to make a quick bead. And what we're going to do is make a twisty, and then we're going to apply it onto a flower bead that we're going to quickly make. So, first things first, the way I hurriedly get a lot of glass together is, or a larger amount, is see how I go a little bit down a ways and heat it all the way around? Then I fold it back upon itself. And then I do it one more time. I heat it all the way around till it will bend. Okay, so now I just go ahead and melt that down. And I'm trying to speed things up, and of course things never go quite as quickly as you'd like them to. I'm using my brass tool. We're going to kind of mush it all together, and then we'll be ready to make it into a twisty. This does not need to be rocket science, what we're doing. We just need a gather. And I'm trying to show you kind of one of my quick ways of doing things. So we're just heating it all over, as you can tell, getting closer. Kind of rolling it around a bit to get it all together. And sometimes I'll even take my mashers and kind of speed things up just a little bit more. We just give it a little bit of a mash, and then we get it more into shape. I want it to be a little more even, or somewhat even, before I do it. And what we're going to do is, to make a bead, we're going to take this yellow, which I believe is number 408 effetre, and we're going to stripe some black down it, because the bead needs some stripes. And then we're going to twist it, and we're going to keep it a little bit on the thicker side. And the reason why is because I'm going to cut it off, and each piece that I cut off is going to turn into a bead. So give me just a sec, and let's make a nice little fat stripe right down one side. And I want the stripe to go all the way down and kind of even. Okay, so see, you can see where the black is, and you can see the yellow. It doesn't need to be done exactly like I did it, but kind of around that. And I always prefer a lot more yellow to black. And then we're going to take the end of this clear rod after it finishes spinning. There we go. And we're going to attach it to the end before we pull it. And I do not make exquisite twisties, just so you know, but I do want little sections, maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch long is the size that my beads are going to be. And it's just going to look like a twisty to you. I'm warning you. Don't expect it to look like a bee yet. But once we apply it, it will work great. So what I'm doing is I'm adding clear across the black and the yellow and attaching it there. So now I'm going to heat it up, and I'm looking for dark areas to erase, essentially, so that I can see that it's all melted in. I want my glass to be pretty much the same size. Okay, we're close, and it's warm, and I take it out, and I wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, and then I start twisting. See about that thickness? That's about what I want. Don't worry if you have T-bones or if it isn't perfect. It's not a big deal. Okay, that's it. That's all we're doing. See, I'm heating it up a little bit to get just a little bit more out of it. And we're gonna stop and see how it's kind of wrinkly on the end. I am not worried about that. So we're gonna flame cut it, although we could just cut it with regular clippers. And we're gonna let that cool for a minute while I grab my clippers. Okay, found them. And I'm gonna turn my torch off just for a sec. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clip off little pieces. I need to be sure that the black goes far enough down. So this one doesn't have enough black on it, so I'm going to just cut that off. This has got a little bit on it. I want it a little bit closer, the lines together. So these are just these are kind of big ones that won't work quite as well. Here we go. I want at least 2 lines to show up on it. 3 would be better, but 2 will work fine. So these are just gonna cool. These are all little bees that I'm cutting off. Now what I normally do is I will wait until I'm ready to use them and then cut them off. But I wanted to make a flower and have some cool ones that I can choose from. Okay, so we're gonna let that go. We're going to bring our little potential bees over here. If they're a little skinny, don't worry, we can work with that. This is the thickness that I really prefer, if at all possible. But if they're thinner and littler, they make cute little baby beads, baby bees. And I'm just grabbing a couple more to keep them, kind of corral the bees. My hive is over here, obviously. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a quick flower. And I have a lot of different flowers already on my YouTube channel. So just look around. Remember, all you need to do is to type in Marcy Lamberson and you will find lots and lots of videos. So it's really quite easy. Let me cut the rest of this off. There we go. Okay, so now I've got my clear rod back that I can use that. Okay, and I'm just gonna need a color to make for petals, and this is just kind of a quick one. We aren't really going with fancy flower stuff. We're just kind of going with, hey, this is a great way to show off your bees. So let me see, what if we had this color as a center, and how about some transparent, deeper blue petals? It's definitely a fantasy flower, I can tell. Okay, so let's just use a little of this. Yikes. Okay, we're gonna make the center of the flower. This is on a 3/32 mandrel. So normally I would use like a green center, a yellow center. I don't want to use a yellow center when I'm doing bees though. I kind of want other colors that will show up and be pretty. And I tend to like translucent petals. And the way that I do those, and you can see it in some of my other YouTube tutorials, I like to put like down an opaque color and add a lot of clear to it. So it still isn't totally transparent, but it's translucent. And I think those are really pretty. So I'm making a base bead, not exactly round, but just kind of a big one so that I have room from the center to add some petals off of it. Let's round that up for a second. And I think I'd like it a little bit bigger. And we're going to flatten the bottom in a minute after we add a little bit more to this. Okay, and let's work with what we have here. So we're just kind of making this is going to be the center of the flower. And I'm not sure what color that is. That might be Mermaid. Creation is Messy. Might be another one that's kind of close to that. I'm not sure. I just had it in my glass jar and I thought, let's go with that. It's fast. It was sitting right there and I knew that a bee would show up against it if I put a bee in there. So I've rounded this up. This is like a fat spacer bead. And then what I'm going to do after it cools a tiny bit is flatten one side, and that will be the bottom. And then that way, if you're wearing it, whether on a bracelet, as a pendant, or whatever, it will have a flat base that's easy to work off of. And I think I want to add, see how I flattened it down there? I'm going to add just a little bit more on the top, because if you raise it up a little ways, it will be easier to add the petals to it. And I'm a big fan of let's make this easier for us. So I flattened the top part just a little bit to spread it out a little bit more, but we're going to add just a little more glass on top so that I have room to go around the sides and add the petals. And let's heat that up so it attaches well. I'm holding it upside down to heat it up because I want the glass to flow downwards instead of flattening it if possible, but I have to kind of turn it about this way for it to show. And I find that all along I forgot to attach my microphone, so I'm going to do that now, and hopefully you will have been hearing me all along. Okay, this should be better now. Okay, so we've got the center of the flower. I'm going to add some quick petals. And this is a transparent cobalt blue. This is not Effetre. It's kind of a old, not made anymore brand that came out of Russia years ago. Excuse me. And wasn't widely distributed. It was just for a small group out of Asheville. But I happened to get some, and I love this transparent blue. So let's add a dot for a petal here. Yeah, we're going to go around, add a couple of petals, then we'll make the petals a little bit larger. We're just adding some glass. They're like raised large dots. We're going to keep all the glass warm. We're going to try and make them pretty close in size. So there's two. Let's get another one on there. And I'm just going towards the top above the line that would be the mandrel line. Just adding bits of glass. Now you're going to need a masher to mash these. If you have a small masher, like tweezer mashers, those would work great. If you have some sort of petal masher, that would be easy too. But just your small mashers should work fine. Looks like this is a 5-petal flower. So with this final petal that I'm adding in there, the final blob of glass, you got to be kind of careful that it doesn't land on your mandrel, which is so easy to happen. If it does, you want to angle your glass upside down so it doesn't touch it, or take a brass tool and push it away. And then you can always cut it if it does attach. Don't heat up your scissors, heat up the glass, and then take your kitchen shears or your glass shears or whatever you have and cut it away from the mandrel. And that's what I do sometimes. Sometimes that stuff happens. So I'm just adding a little more glass onto the petals so they have approximately the same amount. And you might need to manipulate it a little bit to get it the way you want it, but this will be close. I'm trying to do this quickly so it's easier for you to see. So let's see. I am going to take some mashers. I have some curved ones that I like. And I'm just going to go around and press these petals because we aren't going for a pretty flower necessarily right now. I'm just trying to get it done so I can show you how to do the bee. And I'm going to take each one and heat them individually and press them gently. Okay, and that one's got chill marks. We're going to want to get the chill marks off. You can take tweezers afterwards and fix them, put them in the direction that you want them to go, add a little movement to them. Whatever works best for you. So I'm heating up each of the petals individually. And I move them around while they're warm. I can move them if it needs to be closer to another petal or whatever I want to do with it. And you don't need to make them really super hot when you're doing this either, because you just need it enough for the glass to move, right? And I'll show you how I spread out the petals a little bit too after a bit. Okay, we'll get the chill marks off in a little bit. So sometimes it's in kind of a hard way to squish location. So I might do it upside down even. Okay, so you can see we have an approximate flower there. And if I want to, I could take my tweezers and use them. These are tungsten tweezers. And I would heat up the edges and just squeeze and pull out a little bit. See how that makes it spreads it out a little bit and makes it look not quite as much like you had just hit it with just your mashers, but it gives it a little bit more movement. I like a few wrinkles in my petals. To me, it looks more realistic. I'm heating the front and the back, and especially the edges, and see how I just take my tungsten tweezers and pull them out a little bit. And we got to keep everything warm at the same time too, don't forget. So this one probably should move over towards this just a little bit. And this one could spread out a tiny bit more towards this. So you see how I just heat up a little bit? If they get too close together, I can always use my shears and cut them apart if that's a concern. I'm just squeezing them and moving the edges around to where I want them. And one more to go. We're keeping the bead warm in between. So here's the last one. I'm just turning them more into petals, right? And this one, because it's hard to reach, I'm going to do upside down. And then I'm going to look at it and see whether I need to adjust it. I think this works just fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to have a little bee, probably resting in between the petals and the center. And let's get one of these pieces. Here's one of these pieces of twisty. First of all, I want to be sure that my bead is warm. And there's the back and the front. And then what I'm going to do is heat up one end. That end looked like it wanted to come off, not a problem. I want it to round up just a little bit, so I'm getting it a little bit warm. And I'm going to heat the bead where it's going to go, and I'm pressing down. So it's standing up, and it certainly doesn't look like a bee, but watch this trick. We're going to heat this up, from all sides, and it's going to start going in down on itself and getting a little bit rounder as it gets warm. And we can just very gently push it into where we want the bee to be. So all of a sudden, when that cools, that's going to be bright yellow and black. And I like to add just a little bit from a stringer for a little head on it. So I decide which way it's going to go, and this way I've got more room to add just a little dot for a head. And now what I need are some wings on it, and then we're going to have a bee. I know it's strange, but it's kind of cool too. And I like the wings to go across the back, not out too much. And this is kind of a big glass rod to be using for the wings. If you have a smaller rod, probably be a little bit easier. So I'm going to heat up my bee. I'm going to keep the petals warm also. And I'm going to go on the farthest side. I'm going to go straight down and out a little bit. And then flame cut. And then I'm going to press that out just a touch from the center going out. And I don't know whether you can see them, but they go out like this. You can see that under there. So the next thing is, let's match that. And we're just heating up as much clear as we want to use. Don't want a whole bunch more, because then you have to corral all of that. We're going to touch down in the middle, push down just a little bit, and pull out, and then flame cut. So there's another little bit of clear glass, and then I'm going to push it out just a little bit as I'm pressing it down. So we have one wing there. It kind of shapes an upside down heart. So that would be the rounded part, the two rounded areas, and coming down towards there. And then the other little thing I like to put on the bee is some little antenna too. So those are just going to be two little dots off of the head. Off the top of the head, there's one dot. There's two dots. We're going to let that cool for a minute while we're heating the rest of the bead. And we can heat it from behind a bit also, which is kind of nice, because then it won't mess up anything on the front. And then I'm going to go back and just kind of hit the head a tiny bit to make sure that those antennae are on. So there we have it. There's a bee on top of a flower. And I hope that you will try this sometime in whatever iteration, and I will be sure to show you what it looks like also when this bead is annealed. I'm Marcy Lamberson. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing you. Bye.